You know what? Finding a free MMORPG is hard. And in retrospect, you know what? I can see the potential there to make a very highly immature joke, but I'm not going to. I'll refrain. You know why? Because this is a very serious video. Yeah, I'm capable of doing those. And at the end of the day, I am a very serious content creator. Okay, that might be a lie, but at the very least, I am very passionate about not only the genre, but also the games that comprise it. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. There are legitimately no quality free MMOs out there. So how on earth did you manage to locate and populate this list with 10 different games that I should try? And you know what? Shh. Okay, this isn't the moment for that kind of sass. You know what this is the moment for though? An obligatory don't forget to subscribe message. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest MMO news, release announcements, gameplay, and discussions every day. And if you feel like I deserve it, which in my totally objective opinion, definitely do, drop a like and a comment on the video. It is a huge help for the YouTube algorithm. Now today we're going on to discuss 10 different free MMORPGs that you should totally try in October 2021. These are not the best free MMOs, not by any stretch of the imagination. I will have a final top 10 free MMOs video towards the end of this year with that information specifically. But this video, these 10 MMOs are just games that you might enjoy, especially while waiting for games like Lost Ark to come out next year, or maybe Endwalker next month. Now, I have talked about every single game in this list multiple times over the last 3-4 years, and that is because I've genuinely enjoyed all 10 of them. There are, I don't know, maybe a grand total of like 30, maybe 40 free MMOs that I would probably invest longer than an hour into. And these 10 games right here, well, I mean, these are 10 of them. Now, with that out of the way, you should totally come join us over on Twitch later today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, we're gonna be streaming and we would love to have you come on by. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and do this. Age of Conan is an action MMORPG released back in 2008. This is a pretty narrative-heavy title, with the story being responsible for pushing you through a large, beautiful world, albeit the world itself is segregated, meaning that there are loading screens splitting the zones. The game is a little more mature than what I'm used to, and I'm sure is something that a lot of you have never witnessed yourselves, with topics that are most definitely not found within traditional MMOs. It utilizes an action combat system. Granted, it's less spammy and less flashy and requires a little more in terms of coordination than South Korean MMOs like Black Desert. The player base, however, is exceptionally low, which is a shame given that this is one of the few non-traditional MMOs out there that really stand out. Blade and Soul is an action MMORPG released back in 2016. Much like Age of Conan, Blade and Soul is a narrative-heavy title as well. Honestly, this is one of the few South Korean MMOs out presently that have the story as a main focus. The world is enormous, filled with large, beautiful, fantastical environments, although once again, the game world itself is segregated. It utilizes what many players in the MMO genre believe to be one of the best action combat systems, and I don't disagree for most of the classes, especially in PvP. The player base honestly isn't too bad. We're down to a fraction of what the game once had, but there are still thousands, if not tens of thousands of players logging in per month to partake of whatever content there is to, actually partake of. Continent of the Night Seal is an action MMORPG released back in 2012. C9 is a very different type of MMO to the two aforementioned titles, whereas they were both story-driven, this is not. While C9 definitely has a story, it's far from being the focus. And unlike the other two games that had large open worlds, this is a hub MMO, meaning that there is a central quest hub that all players reside in while they queue for instances to complete quests you take from the hub in question. Some people might find that boring, a lack of exploration, not much to really experience outside of dungeons, but hub MMOs have their place, they have their audience. It utilizes an action combat system, honestly, a surprisingly good one given the fact that this is a decade old. The player base is also on the lower end of the spectrum given that this is a niche MMO that is roughly a decade old, but the players it does have are still very dedicated to it. Dragon Nest is an anime-inspired action MMORPG released back in 2010. This is different to any other type of MMO included in the list thus far. On the one hand, it is a semi-hub MMO, meaning that there are a variety of different quest hubs found throughout the game, but there exist areas outside of those hubs that you can navigate and explore with other players as well. This is probably one of the most narrative-heavy titles included until this point, with more quest text than almost anything I have ever seen, although the quests themselves I've learned are still quite buggy. It utilizes a pretty fast action combat system, with players going on to claim that this is still one of the best action MMOs to date, especially given the fact that this is an anime title. The player base is very low, with what is likely about 1,000, maybe less people playing actively per month. Guild Wars 2 is a hybrid action MMORPG released back in 2012. This game also has what is arguably one of the best narratives told within the MMO genre. I dare say the only other MMOs that either compare to or exceed this are Star Wars: The Old Republic and or Final Fantasy XIV. Guild Wars 2 features a large segregated world, much larger than almost any other MMO that utilizes the same world type. It has a unique questing system and provides meaning and purpose to the world, all about encouraging you to explore it. It utilizes a hybrid action combat system, with most abilities not requiring targets, but it's most definitely not true action combat like Black Desert or Tera, which is evident if you played any of those games. However, it does provide an interesting combat system that allows you to equip a variety of different weapons that directly affect what abilities you have. The player base is surprisingly high for a free MMO. It's unconfirmed exactly how large the active monthly player base is, but I would take a guess here and say that there are tens of thousands, if not approaching 100,000 active players logging in every month to play the game in some form or fashion, which will likely increase substantially when End of Dragons launches. Lost Ark is a top-down isometric action MMORPG releasing in the first quarter of 2022, in North America anyway. It's available in a variety of different regions around the world at present, and I've personally played a great deal of it over the last year. I also have a guide on how specifically to play it for those of you that are interested. Now, while there is a very large focus on narrative found within the game, it definitely is not the focus. Rather, the focus is on exploration, expansive zones, on enormous seas. While Lost Ark utilizes segregated zones, much like every other title, its freedom to navigate both large open areas and the endless ocean, finding islands, treasure, and a trove of other goodies, is what helps set this game apart from its competitors. It employs an action combat system that is honestly better than the majority of other action titles present within the genre right now. As a top-down isometric MMO, my only issue is that you don't possess the ability to move with WASD keys and instead require you to use your mouse. The player base is also pretty damn large, split across very different regions. Scarlet Blade is a hybrid tab target action MMORPG released back in 2012, and while the official servers shut down years ago, the game lives on as Scarlet Blade Vendetta. Thankfully, as this is an MMO that we should never lose access to. There's a bit of a narrative present within the game. Honestly, I feel as though there's significantly more quest text available via side content than there is via main content, but that just means that there's more purpose to reading what side quests actually have to say. The combat is hybrid, combining abilities that require no target with traditional tab target. If I were to go ahead and have to label it though, I would definitely say that it is a tab target game. Far too many abilities require a target for it not to be labeled as such. The world is large but segregated. It's also fairly empty in terms of things to see or do, but there are plenty of quest hubs scattered throughout it. The player base is also pretty low though, maybe 1,000 active players per month logging in to actually play. Soulworker is an anime-inspired action MMORPG released back in 2018. Then it shut down in 2021, and then again re-released in 2021, published globally this time by its developer. Yeah, it has been a roller coaster. Like Dragon Nest or C9, this is a hub MMO. It isn't set within a large open world, yet it does have a number of different hubs that are specific to the level range that you are currently. The narrative and the combat are the main focus of the game, with the narrative comprising the majority of the reason as to why you're doing what you're doing and moving where you're moving. The combat is a very high quality action system. Honestly, it's one of the best action combat systems present in any anime MMO period. The only game that compares is PSO2 New Genesis. The player base for the game averages thousands of unique players per day and tens of thousands of unique active players per month. Tera is a pure action MMORPG released back in 2012. NMAS Entertainment, the publisher for North America, recently closed down and the game was given over to Gameforge to publish both within North America and Europe. I can't say Tera really has much of a narrative. Many people often joke about how little sense the game makes from a story standpoint, and after the alterations to the game made the leveling process faster with the removal of much of the content, any semblance of coherent story vanished without a trace. Tera is a beautiful open world MMO with enormous zones to explore, albeit the zones themselves are a little smaller in scale than Guild Wars 2 or Blade and Soul, but it did predate them. The combat is what I consider to be some of the best in an MMO to date. Sure, Black Deserts is faster and it looks flashier, but the combos, the classes, and the action combat present within Tera is still my favorite to date. The player base is particularly low though, averaging tens of thousands, if that, of unique players per month. Vindictus is an action MMORPG released back in 2012. To date, many players wish that Nexon, or any developer for that matter, would create an MMO with combat like this game utilizes. Combat is fast, combat is clean, it's fluid, you can interact with your environment, you can pick up pillars, enemies, launch objects at enemies long range. There's so much to this combat system that I just have never seen it done anywhere else in the genre, and I completely agree that the genre itself is truly missing out not having this in an open world MMO. Vindictus is a hub MMO much like Soulworker, and thus it doesn't provide much in the way of exploration. It does provide a lot of story though, like too much story, even for me, who absolutely loves story in my games. The player base is also pretty low, averaging thousands of active players per month. And that is it. 10 MMOs, completely free MMOs that I urge you to go ahead and play. If you'd have any that you'd like to recommend to people, that's what the comment section is for, so fire away.